This is John Jackson Miller, and you're listening to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. May the Force be with you.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast, episode number 73. I am your host, Brian Miller, and I'm so glad you've decided to join me to talk about our favorite thing in the world, yet again, Star Wars. And as always, joining me from across the pond, you guys know him, you guys love him. He is my Wookiee co-pilot, Mr. Usef Waly. How's it going, brother?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for calling me a Wookiee. I love Wookiees.
Hopefully, we're
not
not
as
going to...
hairy as one, although I don't think anybody wants to be as hairy as a Wookiee. But I'm pretty good.
You go through a lot of shampoo. Remember how? I don't know if you've read the book, but
What do you do with that beard of yours? Arguably, you have more hair than I do.
you know what? It takes a lot of work to keep it looking this good. You remember? I don't know if you've read the novelization for Solo, but Lando was like really mad at Chewie for using all of his shampoo. So, you'd go through a lot of pert. So, yeah, and we last week we had some technical problems. Then we finally were able to work them out. This week we have a little bit. I'm having problems on my end now, and so we had to record a little bit differently than what we normally do. But we've got it working. We're here. We're going, and we're going to be talking about some AHSOKA episode 5 tonight. I'm very excited about it. But before we get in,
awesomeness, basically.
oh god,
Just
it's
say some
so
awesomeness
good,
right
so
away.
good. It's so good. It's like that meme where the guy is like rubbing his face, and he's like, yeah, that's what kind of episode this was. So, before we get into all that, real quick housekeeping stuff, we'll get it knocked out, and then we'll just start talking about some AHSOKA. Go check out our new website. It is starwarscanon.net. That is the new website. I don't think I mentioned it last week. It is still under construction. So if you guys go to the timeline and it's not all there, it's because I'm still working on it. The timeline's huge, guys. We're at a point now where there's so much more in canon than there ever was in the EU Legends stuff. So it's a huge timeline. The Legends timeline is actually on there, complete, done, everything is there. But the canon one, it's interesting trying to keep it updated while putting it in. It can be a little bit of an issue. So bear with me. I'm working on it. We're getting it there. But go check out the website, man. You guys can listen to this show there. You can find Usef and I there every week talking about Star Wars and whatnot. So all that out of the way, let's talk about some AHSOKA. Let's talk about some AHSOKA, man. This episode was a huge one. This is one that a lot of people were excited about. This one, you want to know, like... When I was on Newsnet Live on Thursday night, I really thought I was going to make some people mad with some of the stuff I said about the episode.
Before or after the episode?
After we saw the episode.
Oh, yeah, so just last Thursday, right.
And so I've got some thoughts on it. I really loved the episode. Don't get me wrong. Guys, don't lynch me. I did love the episode.
No, everybody enjoyed it as an experience.
It was good.
I'm 100% sure everybody did, yeah.
I feel like they kind of overhyped it a little bit, though. I feel like it might have been a little overhyped, putting it in theaters. Now, granted, I didn't get to go see it in a movie theater, and I'm not just being salty because I didn't get to. That's not what it is. But after seeing the episode, I was like, man, I don't know if that was like really movie theater worthy. I get where people are going to disagree with me. Totally understand it. Totally get where you guys think it was. And where you feel like it was. For me, I don't feel like it was movie theater worthy, but we can get into all that. Usef, you watched this episode. What were some of your...
Not in a movie theater.
Not movie theater. What were some of your initial thoughts on the episode? What were you kind of expecting out of it? And what did you get out of it you were expecting, and what did you get that you weren't expecting?
So initially I wasn't expecting... Okay, so here's the thing. Logically, looking back at my own prediction, it had to have been wrong. Whenever I make a prediction for something, it's not necessarily because that's what I want to happen. It's not necessarily because that's what I think should happen. It's just something that I think, I'm just reading into this a little bit too much. And I would have thought that Anakin being there would have been actually being, Anakin being there. And he wasn't. He was a Force manifestation, or he was a sort of a trial or a learning process that Ahsoka was going through, the Force saving her, I suppose. Or all of this could have happened in a split second in her consciousness, in her subconscious, while she was sort of pre-drowning, after falling into the sea right off of the cliff after the fight with Balin. I really wanted that to be Anakin. I wasn't disappointed or anything. I was just saying I really wanted that to be Anakin. But it wasn't. So this was Ahsoka experiencing a side of the Force, and Anakin going through the motions, through this specific sort of motion, and retraining her a little bit, showing her that little extra side, something that she never got to see with Anakin before. And that was amazing. It was really cool to see. It was a lot of insight. The reason why it is a little bit of, in my own mind, it does a little bit of a caveat in that what I wanted it to be real, that it happened, that Anakin would have given her advice, that she would have had an actual moment with Anakin again. But, technically speaking, everybody I speak to, like Jay, like other people, like friends of mine over here, everybody I speak to who I say this to is like, no, that can't have happened, because there's no way that you can have that and then say, oh, but Ahsoka should tell Anakin that he's going to go to the dark side or something like that. They're going to have that conversation, because this is like years and years and years. This is like more than 15, 20 years into the future of, pre-Darth Vader to post-Darth Vader. This is like 8, 10 years after the fall of the Empire, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
So if this is, so seriously, Usef needs to be a little bit more realistic here, is basically what I'm trying to say. That being said, what we saw essentially was unbelievable Star Wars, a lot of fan service went into this, and I loved it. So what actually happened was Ahsoka having this challenge put before her, experiencing these heavy emotions, experiencing these heavy scenes, pushing herself, talking things out loud about, she mentioned some really heavy concepts as well. And while the show doesn't really go into it more, but when she holds the hands of that clone trooper, when he's dead, when he's dying, when he's dead, when they're talking about the firing, we're talking about the innocents, talking about the people dying. Star Wars does have some very heavy themes. Just because Clone Wars and Rebels were animated, just because this is fiction, doesn't mean that this isn't heavy. I still get goosebumps watching Rogue One or thinking about Rogue One when they're on the planet, when they're on the beaches and they're firing, and the walker, the giant walker, just turns to look at them, and then yeah, exactly, what I'm talking about. But then the X-wing just comes flying in and takes it out. And they're like, and they cheer the X-wing, and the pilot, who's presumably just high enough off the ground where he can see them, but not so high that he, you know what I mean? Like he can sort of feel, he's not affected by the ground, but he understands what's going on. Right. And that sort of acknowledgement they have for each other, it still gives me goosebumps, because these are still soldiers. These are still people going through, not just stuff. These guys are dying for a cause, for freedom, for rebelling against actual tyranny. Mm-hmm. It's still an insane concept. It's still very heavy, very, very tough. And so this is what she's going through. And then that glimmer at the end, which I'm going to ask you to talk about a little bit, is that bit. Does she get Sith eyes? Does she potentially tap into the Force? Because the internet is wholly
it's a blaze. Yeah, it's nuts. It's a blaze the same way everybody was upset about Anakin's lightsaber.
I'm wondering what you think before. Yes. So because Ahsoka, honestly, I don't think, I'm not sure that she got Sith eyes. I think it was just a reflection. I think she showed intensity. I think that it was intense. I think that she was, like she's got it. She's beaten him, and she could end him right now. And this is a memory. This is a Force. This is something. Not memory. This is.
Is he there?
Yeah. Having some power issues.
That was close. Yeah. It was cool because you'll see it when we do the video later, but everything went dark on you for an instant, and then it froze, and it was just like you in this like blue light.
As I started
and I was like, I think we lost him, and then you came back instantly. I'm like, that was because the lights went down before the Wi-Fi went out, so you can see it go dark for just a second. So anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, it's cool. I'm right here. I think it was just some power issues. Even if I'm not, am I on Wi-Fi? Oh shit, I am. Okay, let me tip. It's fine. Well, it'll be okay, hopefully. No, what I meant is that she shows that intensity that she can do it, but she's fine and she chooses to not do that. I don't think she gets the Sith eyes. I don't think she's that close to experiencing the dark side. I think she experiences intensity in all its forms because of how much of a warrior she is, because she is a warrior. And that's exactly one of the messages that she experiences with Anakin, with the Anakin Force, with the Force, is that you are, you are a warrior. You are a fighter. You have to keep fighting. Killing is a part of what you're going to be doing forever.
Right.
Because if you stop, then you stop completely. Then you have to take to one side. You can't just keep going and take a side role. That's the message I got from Ahsoka, at least. What do you think?
So there's one thing I disagree with you on, and I think I think Anakin was actually Anakin. I think it was actually him. I think the whole thing, like, part of me wants to say it all happened in her head, but at the same time, if it all happened in her head, how did Jason and Hera hear the lightsabers clashing, right? I mean, unless she was, the only way they'd be able to hear that is if, they were actually in the world between worlds. You know what I'm saying? Like in a different dimension, basically, is what it would be.
Listen, I'd be so happy if that really was Anakin. I'm serious. I think
it was
because. Okay.
Oh, the only reason I say that is because I think it was a vision that the Force brought to her. I think it was Anakin coming to her because she was unconscious. How is he going to come to her as a Force ghost if she's unconscious through a dream, through whatever's happening in her head while she's floating underwater? I think that was actually Anakin because she makes the comment to him. Remember, she makes the comment to him, I will not fight you. And he's like, I've heard that before. And, it's a callback to Luke telling him the same thing from Return of the Jedi when he's like, I will not fight you, Father. And when he's fighting Vader. And I definitely think that was him. But what's cool is if it actually was him.
Oh, so you think it's Anakin reaching through the Force rather than Anakin
appearing to
Darth
her.
Vader actually going into the world between worlds.
Right. And so, and what's cool about that is if that's what it is, if that's actually what's happening here, he has the ability to switch back and forth between what he was and what he is now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I remember saying a long time, and this was been years ago. This has been, I think, before even you and Steven and JG joined in. I think it's been a long time. It was before episode 9. And remember when everybody was talking about, there's probably going to be a Force ghost of Anakin pop up somewhere talking to Kylo Ren. That never happened, obviously, but we were all speculating that was going to happen. And I remember saying, I think it'd be really cool to see the Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker, like, flicker, like static, between Hayden Christensen, like a blue Force ghost, and then like to like a red, like burnt, damaged version of him back and forth because that him and Vader,
and so similarly,
yeah,
so
and like symbiotic, yeah. And so I always thought that would be really cool, just and him be Anakin most of the time, but once in a while just flicker back and forth, just real quick, kind of like what happened with the you just finished it recently with the hologram with Palpatine at the end of Rebels, right? You remember how it flickered back and forth? That's exactly what I wanted to see with Anakin's Force Ghost. And we got a little bit of it in Shadow of the Sith novel because it flickers back and forth between Hayden Christensen and Sebastian Shaw's, like between young and old Anakin Skywalker because he's having a hard time coming through. But I really thought that would be a cool way to do the Force Ghost. And so when we saw him go to like Vader mode, the Nightfall Anakin or whatever, I think is what everybody's calling it, the Nightfall Anakin, when he's got the Sith eyes and the red lightsaber, which was chef's kiss, that was awesome. I think it's cool that he wasn't actually going into Sith mode. He was just putting on the appearance to teach Ahsoka this lesson, right? And it's cool because he was really teaching her the same lesson that he said to Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. When Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting, or Obi-Wan and Vader are fighting, Obi-Wan cuts his mask. And you see the reflection of the lightsaber colors kind of symbolizing which version of Anakin is coming through, whether it's Anakin or Vader, right? Yeah. And so when it's blue and it's Anakin coming through, he tells Obi-Wan, I am not your failure. you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
I did. And
Right.
then it turns back to red. I did.
And so he was.
And even the voice turns a little bit.
Yeah, I loved it. And so it was the same kind of message he was trying to tell Ahsoka, because Ahsoka was carrying that guilt of what happened to Anakin. So when she tells him, you were so much more than that. You were more dangerous than anybody realized. And he's like, is that what this is about? Okay, that's when he knew what he had to do to drive this lesson forward. And that's when he, went into the Sith mode or whatever, the Nightfall Anakin mode. I thought it was really cool.
No, that's very cool.
I
insight,
loved it.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. That's amazing. I do hope that really was Anakin through the Force reaching out, teaching Ahsoka. I'm very, very happy with that. But so wait, how are we going to discern this? Are we going to wait until like this comes out as, well, not a DVD? I mean, it's on Disney Plus. But I mean, like, is there going to be like a Dave Filoni commentary, like the kind that I experienced with Rebels?
I hope so. I hope. I'm surprised he hasn't already come out and talked about it. I'm surprised there hasn't already been a YouTube video dropping where Dave Filoni's like, well, this is what was going on. Like, and I hope they do. I hope he comes out and just solidifies exactly what happened and explains it. Because I think once Dave Filoni explains it, it makes more sense to everybody. Because he has a way of explaining things. You've seen the video of Dave Filoni talking from Gallery, how he talks about how the Duel of the Fates duel links all the way to Return of the Jedi. And that entire segment, I played it for Kirsty a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, this guy gets Star Wars in a way nobody else does. And so I hope he comes out explaining what happened. I think we've pretty much nailed down kind of what happened with it. But I do want to know if it was, all in her head or if she physically went there. You know what I'm saying? But there were several moments in this episode, and there's a couple of moments that are the highlights for me in this, and I think everybody already knows what they're going to be. It's the Clone Wars flashback stuff.
Absolutely.
It's
felt
absolutely
so
cool. the highlight of this episode. The highlights, excuse me. So when we were watching this episode, I like the little teasing between Anakin and Ahsoka and how, when they start fighting and everything, and some of the stuff that's said between them, she's like, you look the same. He's like, you look old. Like, he just didn't hold back. And it's exactly something Anakin would have said to Snips. And, when they're having their little spar at the beginning of it, and it's all good-natured, it seems good-natured, and she lands that kick.
It seems
right?
good. There you go, yeah.
That kick she landed is the exact same move she landed on Maul during the Siege of Mandalore. It's the exact same spin, same move, everything. And when he cuts the platform out from under her and she falls and she lands, as soon as she landed, and it kind of faded back in for a second, I looked at Kirsty, I'm like...
And then it's all red, like the sand there,
smoky,
and the terrain changed. Yeah.
I told Kirsty, I'm like... And what gave it away for me, the dead giveaway, was the lightsaber on the hip. I'm like, that's young Ahsoka.
Yeah,
that's young Ahsoka, because it wasn't the curved
before they
hilt.
zoom in and they show you.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, this is young Ahsoka, and Kirsty's like, oh my God, it is. And so I'm like, oh my God. And so I was hoping beyond hope that we'd get Ashley Eckstein voicing her, just as a nice little, I feel like she deserved it. But I get why they didn't do it, because they didn't have Matt Lanter voicing Anakin. I get it, but I totally understand where they're coming from on it. But the girl that played young Ahsoka, I want to talk about her for a second. The girl that played young Ahsoka nailed it. She nailed it. This is the same girl.
She's not just great as Ahsoka. Exactly. So she has all these roles. Oh my God.
She was young Gamora in Infinity War.
Exactly.
And I think she was just in the Barbie movie also. From what I've seen.
She is one of the busiest young actors, busiest actors period in Hollywood. Oh my God.
Yeah, she's so good. She was believable as Ahsoka. I totally bought it. That was Ahsoka. She had the same speech patterns, the same body language, everything. I could just see that scene playing out in animation, But what's cool about it, and, I want to talk about the Siege of Mandalore flashback here in a minute, but what's cool about it is it really put into perspective exactly how young Ahsoka was during the Clone Wars.
Absolutely. When you see her as an actress show, live action in that way, asking these questions and with that young voice and a little bit shorter than she was in animation as well in comparison with the character, it was spot on.
Yeah.
Absolutely spot on.
And, it also showed how much, because I think there's something lost in translation with animation, right?
Absolutely.
And not just with characters, but with the settings, the backgrounds, everything like that. when you see the Clone Wars in live action, it was gritty, it was gory, it was hell. Some of that's lost in translation and animation because it's animated. You can't see all of it, right? Some of the details are missing. Not everything comes through the way it would in live action. And I think it also put the Clone Wars in a new perspective for me also, exactly how dark and gritty and, and how hellish it was. But when Anakin ran past her in the clone armor and was like, "Let's go, Snips," and I'm like, dude, I can't believe this is happening right now. And
amazing, yeah.
And everybody lost their minds when we got that cameo from Captain Rex, right? And but nobody seems to realize we saw him like 5-10 minutes before in the episode. In the background, he was talking to some Twi'leks, and you could see him from behind. Nobody noticed it, but it was really cool seeing that flashback. And Kirsty was instantly like, where does this take place? And it's before she said, this is one of our first battles. This is one of our first one. Before she said it, I was like, it's got to be like season 1. She only has the one lightsaber. Like, you know what I mean? But thank God they retconned that tube top that she was wearing in Clone Wars. Thank God they retconned that. I'm so glad they did that. I was very happy. But to see them running side by side, just like in Clone Wars, it was like watching a new episode of Clone Wars. And all of the miss of the lasers and everything was firing right next to them. They're under fire, and then they're going forward, let's go. And then like they move very, very Anakin, very sort of one firm order, and we all do our jobs. Yes.
It was everything was just the right feel, because Filoni was in charge of Clone Wars, so he basically saw this in his mind before he put it into animation. So he's taking that same image and he's putting it into live action. It is so, and Anakin's pauldrons as well, sort of everything, all the touches, that experience. And I'm gonna say this again. This is the second time I'm gonna say this, is because there's only a second episode we've done in a long time, but second episode we've done specifically because we're talking about Ahsoka. So the first time we talked about 4 episodes in a row, or at once, excuse me. And this time we're talking about 1 episode. Yeah. I'm going to keep saying this probably because it's come up. I am extremely happy that I am caught up on Clone Wars and Rebels, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. It's kind of like it was written in the stars for me to have, to be a little bit late with Rebels. It is actually kind of a benefit to me, a bonus, that it's still so fresh experiencing it for the first time. And I enjoyed Rebels. So I haven't talked about this here on the podcast more, but I enjoyed Rebels more than I did Clone Wars because the characters, I don't know what's going to happen. So I know in Clone Wars, we don't know everything that's going to happen because I didn't know exactly how Darth Maul ended. I didn't know exactly what happened with Ahsoka because I know of Ahsoka. I don't know about Ahsoka. There's a big difference, right? But if I actually had to compare, I enjoyed Rebels a lot. So leading into here, and then going back and experiencing Clone Wars and Rebels as if it was one sequence, I loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. And now seeing Ahsoka now, if I hadn't seen Clone Wars and Rebels, I'd love Ahsoka. This Ahsoka is just hitting me at least, 10, 20, 100 times better, stronger.
Right.
Hits me in the feels that much more. Seriously, a whole lot more. And I'm so happy because of that. It is enhanced my experience.
It's great.
10-fold. 20-fold, 100-fold.
It's great.
I can't imagine watching Ahsoka now without having watched Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah.
How dare I? You know what I mean? On myself,
How dare you even think
about
that?
I'm not shaming anybody else. But if you haven't watched it, it's okay. You don't necessarily have to, but you'd have a lot of fun, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, picking things out. Like when Captain Rex came on, when you finally see him, he's like, "Come on, Commander," and I'm like, "Yeah!" Like it looks so good. And that was one of my favorite moments in this episode is when they cut back into the flashback of Siege of Mandalore, and she comes out of the fog, lightsabers blasting, just spinning on her knees. You know what I'm saying? It was pure Ahsoka. I compare it to the episode of Clone Wars where the Siege of Mandalore kicks off, when they're coming to Mandalore, and she looks at Rex on the gunship, and she's like, "Race you to the bottom," and jumps out. Yeah. Everything from when she jumps out to when she lands is just, she's so ridiculously powered. Like she's in her element. She's, just complete. I don't want to say overpowered, but she's unstoppable. Ahsoka's unstoppable in that entire sequence. And And that's what I saw with Ahsoka in this moment when she was spending, taking out Mandalorians, and when she finally stands up and deactivates her lightsabers, clicks them to her belt, and just stands there with her arms crossed, and just there's blaster bolts flying past her. It's the most Anakin thing I've ever seen. And Anakin walks up. Again, it puts it into perspective. That's the girl that took down Darth Maul in Siege of Mandalore. That's her. Maul lost to her. So, and when it changes the perspective of it. But when Anakin walks up, I'm like, Anakin can't be here. You know what I'm saying? Like, and when he says, I don't know this battle, I'm like, oh, okay, good. Thank God. And she's, this is the Siege of Mandalore. He should have known what battle it was. Seeing the clone troopers with the painted helmets, and everything. And so
it's probably just that he wasn't there. Probably.
Right.
Is kind of the point.
Looks intense. It was, to say the least, it was. But it's cool knowing that Maul was there. For a second, I was like, no. We're not going to get to see Maul again in live action. I swear to God, if we get to see Maul. But we didn't. But I get why, it was one of those things, less is more. And I that was one of my favorite moments in that episode, was seeing Siege of Mandalore Ahsoka, because I bought a hot toy of that Ahsoka with the Mandalorian outfit. I bought that hot toy and the Maul to go with her. Those are the only two hot toys I own, is that Maul and that Ahsoka. And I had to have them. I love that fight. I love everything about that episode. Siege of Mandalore is still like gold standard Star Wars storytelling, right? And to see it kind of translate into live action, I absolutely loved it. So some of these flashbacks, man, I really dug. Even the moment when he kicks her out of the flashback and he comes out the fog and he's like, does the shoulder shrug and does the flicker into Vader a couple of times. Man, what was going through your head when you saw Vader walking out of the fog?
That's it. What's the word? It was a culmination of everything that we felt from Ahsoka's side, leading from end of Clone Wars, Order 66 to now. Not just what we're feeling from Ahsoka when she sort of thinks about it, because we have the rhetoric of her thinking about her master. It wasn't explicitly stated in the show how guilty or not guilty she feels towards Anakin, right?
Right, yeah, so I don't think anybody, it ever was.
Exactly. So anybody ever specifically mentioned, I mean, obviously he comes up when Balin talks about him, saying, Anakin spoke highly of you, but that's about it, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if she, if she had an opinion of Anakin, it would be, it was clearly shown from start to finish, everything. The shock that she had and the realization that like, oh, okay, great. So I'm experiencing Anakin again. This is amazing. Right. I have to remember he's not Anakin anymore. And then she experiences a wrath of sorts. And, maybe you can answer this a little bit more detailed, because who is more wrathful and more powerful when he's fighting? Dark Anakin, fallen Night Anakin versus Darth Vader.
Ooh, I'm saying Nightfall Anakin.
So he's not injured yet. He's not decimated yet.
He's still in his prime.
Exactly. Because Vader was in a different kind of prime.
Right.
He wasn't a prime. He was just in a different kind of prime. So now she's experiencing her Anakin before he's decimated and he's turned into Vader. She's only faced Vader a couple of times total. Maybe was it once? Was it just once, or was it a couple?
She'd only ever faced Vader once. Yeah.
Once, that one time at the start of Rebels. Yeah.
Yep.
So the first time she got pulled into the world between worlds. But yeah, so that wrathful feeling as well. Feeling it myself as a viewer, as a Star Wars fan, that was insane.
Oh yeah,
that was so good.
And
the cinematic experience of having him just kind of like that static you wanted to see. I just had a similar sort of satisfaction of seeing him switch back and forth in that way. That was amazing.
I fully expected when he kicked her out of that fog, and when she landed and looked back up, I fully expected just Darth Vader to walk out.
Just Darth Vader to walk out. Exactly.
That's what I was full. And when you see the saber first, I'm like, oh man. And then when you see the shoulder shrug, I'm like, okay, it is still Anakin. And then when he did the flicker thing, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, there you go.
And exactly. On Newsnet Live, Jay was talking about how it was almost like a horror movie. It was almost like the horror movie villain coming at her and just relentlessly not stopping. And he's not wrong. And one of the things that I liked about that was it's easier to bridge that gap between Anakin and Vader now. It's easier to recognize them as the same person because of this episode. And I think we always knew that they were the same person. We always knew, in principle.
But
that's
they
them.
Never felt like the same person.
Right.
That transition was never there. Yeah.
Right. And now you can actually feel it's the same person both times, and so I think this episode was a really good bridge for his character. I think it was really cool to see him really embrace both sides of it again. Really, really enjoyed it.
Right.
And I get the lesson that was taught to Ahsoka, that she's everything. Remember what Yoda told Luke, they are what, or they are
what they grow beyond us. So
right.
We are what they grow beyond.
Right. And I think that
is the burden of all masters. Yeah.
That's something I think Ahsoka needed to learn. Was that Anakin told her, "You're everything I am. You're everything I know." And Ahsoka was, is that darkness there too? That's what she was worried about. And, no, you've grown beyond what I ever was. And so I think that lesson still echoed back from the sequels into this. And it was also very reminiscent of, I think Tyler talked about this on Newsnet, and it's a great point. I didn't think about it until he brought that up, but it's the same kind of lesson Anakin was teaching Ahsoka that Yoda appeared to teach Luke in Last Jedi.
Yeah.
It's almost the exact same lesson. Ahsoka was, not necessarily giving up, but she didn't really want to go that extra mile to keep fighting. Right. And so that's where Luke kind of was, and took Yoda showing up to teach Luke, you can't give up. Keep pushing, keep fighting. And that's the same lesson that Anakin showed up to teach Ahsoka. And so I thought that kind of say what you will about Last Jedi and the sequel films, whatever, but the symmetry, the poetry is there, the rhyming is there, and I think it was done on purpose. I loved this episode so much. Oh, and especially can we talk about how the world between worlds, how it started to collapse around her, and she was basically I guess you could say baptized and reborn as this new version of Ahsoka. I remember everybody complaining about how stoic she was in the first few episodes of this show. And now it makes sense, because now, she's back to her old self. She's back to that playful, happy. She's not weighed down by that guilt anymore. She's laughing again when she's telling Huyang, "Going in, let's go," And I think it was a rebirth for her. And I think, and I hate using the terminology. I hate this phrase, the Ahsoka the Gray and Ahsoka the White. I can't stand that. I get where everybody's coming from. Totally get where they're coming from. Why that
I
imagery
understand,
matches.
Completely understand. But this is its own thing.
Yeah, I can't stand that. So when she essentially went into Ahsoka the White mode, right? I think that she had to have this lesson in order to really to bridge that gap and to get past that mental block to get to that point. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Am I off my rocker?
I completely agree with you. Completely. I mean, so I talked about everything that, leading up to this, but so what does this mean for her moving forward? That's exactly it. The lesson of the keep fighting, keep going forward, keep identifying yourself. Yeah, you are a warrior. It's built into you. You're so much more than that, even if it's not explicitly stated, but she doesn't need the explicit statement. She needs the reassurance, the deep breath, the sort of look inside, the sort of introspective, just make sure, just keep going, just yeah. Who said stop? Who called time? There's nobody, you're getting burned out, sort of thing. And she is, her being stoic was her getting burned out, having a rift come between her and Sabine, having lots of issues come up, not being part of the Empire's downfall. I always wondered this about Ahsoka in general. I just never, I suppose, pieced the words together, but maybe she regrets not having a bigger role. Maybe.
Very possibly.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so there's so much going on here with her. There's so much rhetoric. You could talk rhetoric about Ahsoka until the cows come home, because unless Dave Filoni himself comes out and says, this is what she feels, this is what's going on, this is this is that, then we're going to have so much speculation. And it's worth it, because she's such a major central character when you think about how she's been with with Anakin in her past, and how she most people who actually ask me what Ahsoka is about, and I tell them, so she was Anakin's Anakin's Padawan. Like, huh? Anakin, I'm interested to see how that turned out. Exactly.
They're going through the same thought process I did in 2008 when I sat down for the movie for the first time. I was like, well, Anakin didn't have a Padawan. What are you talking about? Everybody is just, 25 years? No, it's not even 25. What, 15 years? 15 years past the curb. Everybody, and so I get the feeling. I totally get it. That's why I didn't like Clone Wars at first.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So when you see Ahsoka and when you read into the character a little bit more, this is so worth it. This is so great. And it was important. It was important to see this. This couldn't have been in the first 2 episodes or the second 2 episodes. This had to be in sort of, we had to have hit this as an arc, as a sort of, like we have to peak up a little bit. And then even if we go steady or go down a little bit in the next couple of episodes, I don't think it's going to go down at all. Not in rhythm, not in pace. Not in anything. Mm-hmm. Ahsoka isn't slow paced, but it's not very fast paced either. So it's a good kind of burn. Yeah, I think, to make sure that we're invested in these characters. Speaking of which, these characters, all of them are amazing, and I think all of us think that next episode we're going to be looking into. They're going into this next galaxy. We're going to look at Balin and Shin, and we're going to see what Sabine ends up doing, and we're going to see whether or not we find Ezra and Thrawn. Whether or not we find one of them or something else entirely, maybe there's another entity out there. I don't know. Yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting. Taking this episode now, we can't just talk about this episode at face value because this was not a filler episode.
Not by any means, yeah.
Extremely important, extreme character insight and character development for our heroine, Ahsoka. Jason is great.
Yes.
Jason is really great. Is Jason going to be in Luke's Jedi Academy that he sets up? Does Jake interact with the Knights of Ren? Right? Because that means that he's part of a sort of calamity that happens in the future where everything crumbles, right?
I hope not. I hope
so. He never gets formal training from Luke. He's never mentioned in that, is he?
No, he's never mentioned. I hope that ends up being a thing where Ahsoka just takes Sabine and Jason and just goes and does her own training thing. Like,
I was wondering if Ahsoka's going to die at the end of not at the end of this, but at the end of the movie. Out,
I totally believe she's gonna biff it in the movie, and so
she doesn't ride off into no sunset.
No, nobody is going to kill her off except Dave Filoni.
Yeah,
he's the only one who can do it. And if he's doing this movie, I think she's going to sacrifice herself to really take down Thrawn and everything. And because she's nowhere in the sequel films. She's nowhere in any of the comics. Like the Knights of the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. There's nowhere for her. She's in none of the novels. And so she has to biff it.
She has her own path.
She has to. And I think she's going to go out.
Unless for some magical reason she takes them back to the other galaxy or something. They just disappear
and just stay there.
Kind of like how Ezra up and went. Yeah, just stays there.
It's possible.
But that's completely different.
It is possible.
But and the entire realm of possibilities that this other galaxy opens up is insane.
Yeah.
Our minds are going crazy. All of us just thinking about what could happen.
I know.
Yeah, there's another galaxy out there. Holy crap! The Star Wars galaxy in itself is insane. Now you're telling me there's another one? That could be completely different than this one, than that one, than the one we're in right now. What if Thrawn is in our galaxy? What if this is us?
They're going to the Milky Way.
What if they're the UFOs? What if this is
You want to know something? It's possible if you really think about it, because E.T. is in episode 1.
Okay.
E.T. is there. He's in the Senate chamber. There's like 3 of them on one of those floating platforms, and they're like, heads are going up, and they're like waddling around. It's the same alien from E.T. It's the exact same alien.
Okay.
So it's possible, I suppose. And it's funny because if you watch E.T., E.T. recognized the kid dressed up as Yoda for Halloween.
Right.
He was like, and he starts pointing at him. I was like, So it's entirely possible. You could retcon it in. You could do it.
George Lucas direct E.T. or produce?
That was Steven Spielberg. But they're buddies, and so
they're buddies.
Yeah.
They're buddies. I mean, Spielberg, Lucas, and Steve Jobs were shareholders in Apple way back then. And all 3 of those, plus John Lasseter, were shareholders in Pixar, and John Lasseter was managing Pixar. Yeah. So I mean, these guys are buddies in more ways than one. So yes,
I the other moment I really liked in this is when, I brought it up earlier when Jason and Hera, when they're listening for the lightsabers, and Hera's like, all right, let's go. And she hears him, and she's like, all right, guys, do it again. And Carson's like, we just did it. And he's like, do it again. And he's like, I don't get it. And Hu Yang's like, oh, the boy's father was the Jedi Kanan Jarrus. He has abilities. And Carson's just like,
abilities.
okay.
Right.
He just starts around and goes and does it. I love that moment. And it was really cool.
Like, well, why'd you say so? It's kind of like sort of like
oh, well, now that you put it that way.
Exactly.
And so, and then when they're on the Ghost and they're flying over the water, and Jason radios Hera, and he's like, Chopper says you need to fly low, and she's like, how low? And you hear him in the background like, she wants to know how low you got to fly. Yeah, really low. Like it was nice to see, Jason and Chopper basically be a new version of like Anakin and R2 from Episode 1.
Exactly.
It's very reminiscent, and so I really, really enjoyed it a lot.
I have this general issue with humor being not recycled but restarted.
Mm-hmm.
So when you restart the cycle of humor from childish to general quips and stereotypical terms and things that you would say just to get a quick laugh, and then you start growing up and having more mature humor. I had this problem with Avengers and Marvel. I had this problem with so many other franchises that they're sort of starting afresh again, and that makes sense because we're the audiences that we're catering to have to get you have to reintroduce the audiences. So
right.
You have to have the lingo, the language, everything that the humor has to be a huge part of that. And I'm not having problems with Ahsoka at all in this. Even if Jason is being a kid, he's being a kid. He's not being a whiny kid. He's not being a bad kid. He's not being a stereotypical kid. He's just being a normal kid. It's fine.
Yeah.
So him having a few scenes like that with Chopper is great. I love it. It's fine.
I'm loving it so much, and Jason holds a special place in my heart. He just does. I love Jason Syndulla, and I remember I don't remember where I saw it. Somebody was like, I saw online somewhere. Somebody was talking about what if he's not actually like strong in the Force, but it's one of those things where the Force flows through everybody. Right. But I don't think so, because at the end of Rebels, when Sabine's doing her epilogue and she's talking about Jason, she's like, by that time there'd been a new member added to the Spectre, Spectre 7, and he was already a great pilot like his mom, and well, we all knew who his dad was. We all knew his dad. So that means he's got the abilities, right? Why else would that be, brought up? So I know he's going to get
someone that young hearing the lightsabers and hearing that
from the world between worlds. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's strong. He senses it. He feels it. He hears it.
He does.
There. Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I don't think it was quite movie theater worthy. I get why they put it in movie theaters. Totally get it. But I want to bring up another thing real quick that has to do with this episode, because it's going to end up leading into, this series is going to end up leading into a film that Dave Filoni's doing. We already know this. And I want to talk about this for a second, because we broke Disney Plus with a 50-minute episode of Ahsoka. I had to wait almost 2 hours for Disney Plus to finally start calming down for me to be able to play it. It just would not play on my Roku. Would not do it. I think I burned the little loading circle into my TV because I was just sitting there just like staring at it, waiting. And so we broke Disney Plus.
I saw you go onto Facebook and just go, can you guys chill it?
Can you guys? I did. I put on Facebook, can you guys do me a solid and hop off of Disney Plus for like 45 minutes, asking for a friend? And so I have a friend in Ohio that I went to high school with, and she commented on it, and she was like, "Oh, is that what's going on?" She's like, we're not even trying to watch Star Wars, but Disney Plus won't load." I'm like, "It's us, our bad. It's our bad." And so we broke Disney Plus with this episode, right? That, in my opinion, reinforces something that I've been saying for a while. If you guys watch me on Star Wars Newsnet Live, if you guys have heard me say it here, you probably haven't heard me say it here because we haven't really done an episode since the Dave Filoni movie's really been announced. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to go on the record on this show and say it. And it's this huge thing. It's, okay, so I'm trying to put my thoughts together here for a second. So with Ahsoka, so far I'm like 2.5 predictions out of 3 that I got right on this show. I'm going to make a huge prediction for the Dave Filoni movie. And it's not about Ahsoka dying or anything like that. It goes back to an interview I saw with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, where they were saying, you know, like, for example, with Luke Skywalker popping up in Mando at the end of season 2. They were like, you know, we look at the galaxy as a whole. We see who's in play. We see who's possible, you know, what characters could possibly show up. And if it happens to be what they call a legacy character, so be it. It's a legacy character. In that particular instance with Grogu and the Dark Troopers, it made sense for Luke Skywalker to be the one to show up. And so we got an awesome Luke Skywalker taking down Dark Trooper scene, right? It was just awesome. Oh, could use some more of that. And so with them having that mentality, right? Like the Rex cameo, it made sense that Rex was there in Ahsoka. So we got to see Captain Rex. Come on, Commander, let's go. And we'll secure the perimeter, and runs off. It made sense. It wasn't just there for fan service. It made sense for it to be there. With this Dave Filoni movie, it's going to make sense for certain characters to be there. Not necessarily main characters. I don't think they're going to be the main characters of this movie. But I think at some point we're going to get a cameo in this Dave Filoni movie of Leia, Luke, Han, Lando, the droids, Chewie. You know, I think we're going to see it. We're going to see the Millennium Falcon because it's going to make sense that they're there. And like I said, they're not going to be main characters. The movie's not going to be around them. There might be a scene in the middle somewhere, you know, where they're talking to Leia about what's going on through a hologram or something. And then at the end, when this big battle finally happens between the Chimera and the New Republic fleet, I can just see the Millennium Falcon like, you know, coming in.
See a young Ben Solo.
Yes, we could. We actually could. And so he'd be just a little bit younger than Jason. Not by much, but just a couple of years younger than Jason.
Exactly, yeah.
3 or 4 years maybe. But you could totally see that. And I'm telling you right now, we broke Disney Plus with a 50-minute episode. You put out a trailer for this movie that shows the Chimera and the Millennium Falcon flying towards it, and it's instantly a $1 billion movie. Instantly a $1 billion movie, line around the block opening night to go see this movie. You go one step further and actually show just a quick glimpse of one of the legacy characters, one of the big three, $2 billion movie. Instant $2 billion movie. I promise you it's going to happen. I think the movie that Dave Filoni is setting up, this, you know, we're calling it like the Heir to the Empire movie. I don't think that's what it's going to end up being, but that's what we're calling it for now. I think it's going to be a really good way to bring the fandom back together. I think this is the movie that can do it. Because tell me if you think I'm crazy, Usef. The sequel films really did split the fandom horribly. Split us horribly. There's people yelling at each other for liking it. There's people yelling at each other for not liking it. There's, you know, actors and actresses and directors getting bullied off of social media because of these movies. You know, so everybody's upset. Not everybody, but there's a lot of people upset because, well, you know, the EU is the only true canon. You know, this is the canon. You know, there's the fandom is very fractured. We're not all on the same page by any means. I think this movie could do it. I think this is the movie that could bring everybody back in, because you're going to be bringing in people who, more than just Star Wars fans, watch The Mandalorian. More than just Star Wars fans watch Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka. You know, there are grandparents sitting down to watch this who've never watched Star Wars before. There's kids that are sitting down to watch it that have never seen anything before. You do a movie, and let's just say they call it Heir to the Empire. You do this movie, you're going to get the hardcore Star Wars fans, the people who go see everything. We're going to go see it anyway, no matter what. You're going to get grandma who comes over at Thanksgiving and watches The Mandalorian, who's never seen Star Wars. She's going to go see this movie because it's a culmination of all of the Mandalorian stuff and that what they call the Mandoverse. I hate that term too, but of that era. You're going to have canon junkies coming out to see this movie. You're going to have EU legends.
Casual fans
are going to be coming out because, it's a movie about Heir to the Empire. It's got Thrawn in it. I'm going to go see that. You're going to have people coming out of the woodwork to come see this movie. I think this could you're going to have people who are mad because the sequel films never showed the big three together one more time. Han, Luke, and Leia. You never saw them together again. You're going to get to see them together again. You're going to have everybody coming out for this movie. And I think this is the one that could bring everybody back together. Am I nuts?
So this is all going to come back again when next set of movies comes out.
Right.
You know, the next Ray trilogy or whatever trilogy that's going to happen in the future, or whatever movie set period. Doesn't have to be a trilogy per se, but most likely is going to be one. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it will be a culmination point, and I don't think that any Star Wars fan, I don't think there will be any, I don't think there will be much dispute over it. You know what I mean? This coming section, this whole era that we're in right now is great. Nobody has huge qualms about it within the Star Wars fans, within the Star Wars fandom. We see this everywhere. Everybody's happy about it. And so I think that everybody's going to be happy about it. I just don't think it will bring people together. Yes, I think you're completely right about that. However, reconcile between them, not a chance. And I'm not saying that you said reconcile per se. You're not saying reconcile. I'm just saying bring them together. Like, have everybody enjoy something simultaneously without, you know, actually trying to tear each other's eyeballs out for liking it or hating it or disliking this or not liking that. And I agree with you on that point. Yeah, completely.
I just see it happening. I feel like this is the one. And everybody is calling for Dave Filoni to really take the reins of Star Wars at this point. Are we a part of that? Are we a part of that camp?
For a good reason. I am.
Are you?
For sure. I can't believe that they did the sequel trilogy without him. I can't believe it. That was just so unfair to Star Wars fans. It was unfair to him. It was unfair to Star Wars itself. Like, actually treating, you know, like how you can owe a franchise, like you owe it to the story. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
At one point, J.R.R. Tolkien once said this. Like, he owed it to the story to provide another sort of background, because the story has to have a certain continuance and a certain room to grow, and then it also has to have some mystery. You owe it to the story to not finish, like, less can be more. For the story, I'm not talking about for the readers per se, because the story doesn't belong to the readers. The story is itself, and it should stand on its own 2 feet. Other stories can belong to the readers. That's fine. It just depends on what kind of structure you have.
Right.
I just can't believe it. I can't believe that they did the sequel trilogy 7, 8, 9 without him. Without him at all. I just can't believe it. Like, okay, I understand you're not doing it with the George Lucas, of course. And that was the whole rhetoric behind it. Like, we bought it. There's so much hype. We got to announce it now, and we got to do it, and we got to take the next steps right now. Guys, seriously. Like, you're not bringing in, you brought in J.J. Abrams was great. You brought in everybody else everybody who worked on it was great. But you didn't bring the core Star Wars writers who actually know this shit. Seriously. So, yeah. So this is going to be, there's a huge different redemption. There's a huge different kind of redemption here, hopefully.
Yeah.
I just hope the man is happy. I just hope that Dave is a happy guy.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
I just hope he's okay. I just hope he's not upset. I just hope he doesn't feel like he's stuck in Lucasfilm forever now or something. And like I hope that after the culmination, after the Filoniverse sort of comes to this culmination at this film, I hope he stays.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't leave. I hope he doesn't up and leave and say, all right, so I did I didn't do exactly what I wanted to do, but I did something that I know I could do and I know I wanted to do, and I did a great job on it. Let's end on a high. I'm going. No, I hope that doesn't happen. I really, really hope that doesn't happen.
I don't see it happening. I think they've got big plans for him.
Good.
I think how can you be a businessman, right, in Disney? How can you be a businessman in Disney and not sit back and see the reaction that Dave Filoni's material is getting? How could you not see that? And from a business point of view, it's going to make sense to have him make more and more and more, because what's going to bring in more and more money? It's going to bring in more and more money to have him do more and more stuff. And everybody wins. Disney gets more money. We get more Star Wars. Like, we get good Star Wars, you know? I'm not saying that other stuff that Dave Filoni doesn't touch isn't good Star Wars, but apparently there's an obvious answer to, wow, who should take over Lucasfilm? Like, there's an obvious answer to this.
There's a very, very obvious answer.
And maybe not necessarily take over Lucasfilm, but be in charge of story and content. You know what I mean? And I don't want him to make everything. I don't want him to be the one directing everything.
No. I want him to be core.
But I want him
really, really core.
Very core. I want him to be basically a Kevin Feige of Star Wars, the way Kevin Feige is with Marvel, you know? you're in charge of the story that's getting told and greenlighting what goes where, and yeah, I know Kathleen Kennedy is supposed to be doing that. I get that, but she can do the business side of it. She can do the marketing and all this other. Put Dave Filoni in charge of, hiring writers.
The admin, the marketing, the costs,
yes.
everything. Yeah,
put him in charge of hiring directors, greenlighting projects.
Exactly.
I think he needs to be the one doing it. He does.
He needs to be in charge of the formula.
He does. He gets it. Him and Jon Favreau together, Now, with Jon Favreau, I know he's more Mando. Like that's more his wheelhouse. Totally get that. Totally understand that. That's awesome. That's a story he wanted to tell. Doing a hell of a job doing it. I get that. But Dave Filoni, ever since I saw that clip that I talked about earlier, where he's talking about the Duel of the Fates and how it had repercussions even all the way up to Return of the Jedi, ever since I've seen that 7-8 minute clip, give it to him. And now that I've seen this, everything the man touches turns to gold. Everything turns to gold that he touches. And so I don't see it happening in the next 5 or 7 years. I think he gets his movie out, and I think he does another movie. And then I think they're really going to start looking at it like, you know what? this guy gets it. And so, and I think even Dave Filoni realizes he's not ready for it yet, because he's even talked about how, when he was doing animation, he didn't know anything about live action, and so they gave him an episode or two of Mando. He did that. And then he kind of dipped his toes into some other stuff. And now that he's because he said it's a very different thing, right? Between animation and live action. Animation, you can just make it and then tweak things here and there. Can't do it with live action. You have to go do a whole new take, basically. And so he's learning, but that's fine. He doesn't have to direct everything. He doesn't necessarily have to write everything, but I think he definitely needs to be the one that's in charge of what gets greenlit, what gets written, hiring the directors, hiring the writers. I think that's where it needs to go. I think that's where, like I said, not necessarily hands-on with the actual creation process of it, but getting the wheels going and approving everything. I think that's where we need to go. And I think that's in the future. I really think it's in the future. So here's to hoping that the rest of the series is absolutely great. We have literally seen nothing in the trailers for the next 3 episodes except the Thrawn shots now. I think it's been confirmed. Now it's just the Thrawn shots. I have no idea where this is going to end up going, but I can't wait, man. Before we get off of Ahsoka and get into the villain bracket, is there anything else you want to add in about the
Just
the
super
series?
excited. No, we've talked a lot, and we will continue to talk a lot next week, hopefully on the other episode, once we see the next episode on our next episode of the podcast. Honestly, seriously, there's just so much to unpack. It's almost exhausting if it wasn't making us happier by the minute talking about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no, it's
it could
absolutely
go either way. We could get sick of it, or we could get even happier talking about it. It's definitely going in towards the latter of just getting even happier going on. It's fantastic. It's
Love
absolutely
it.
fantastic.
I absolutely love it. So, all right. Well, next week we'll be talking about the next episode of Ahsoka, and we'll have a new Star Wars galaxy to talk about next week, and we'll see what we have then. So let's get into the villain bracket, man. Last week we picked a couple of new villains to put up against each other. You all voted. Real quick, if this is your first episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast, I'm going to let Usef explain to you a little bit how this works real quick in a nutshell. It's his baby. This was his idea. I love doing this. This is a lot of fun. So, Usef, explain to us a little bit about what this villain bracket is.
For anybody who hasn't really heard one of our episodes before, or hasn't heard me rant about this before, I'm a huge fan of villains. I think that villains, you can't have a hero without having a villain. The measure of a hero, in my eyes, to be honest with you, is based on what kind of villain he faces and how strong a villain he is, and how strong a villain, that he faces. The villain in himself is a huge part of the story, of the quality of the story, of the core of the story, of where the story comes from and where it goes, why the villain does what he does, what kind of villain he is. Sometimes they're misunderstood. Sometimes they're villains that we can resonate with. Sometimes they're just misunderstood. There's a whole different array of what kind of, of what kind of villain you can see, whether it's in your life, whether it's in fiction, whether it's in history and nonfiction, honestly. So I just love villains so much that they formulate a huge part of the story for me whenever I look at any story. So at the moment, for example, I'm reading novels which go back to it's a fiction novel going back to like the Roman era, the Bronze Age and Roman era sort of armies and imperialism. It's so cool how they sort of every time you think you know who the villain is, he's not the villain anymore because they show you his side. They show you that he's being conquered and he's fighting it this way. Or there's another guy who's playing dirty, like he's incredible. He's fighting dirty. He's doing this because of the torture that he faced before. He thinks that that's the way to win in this world, etc. Like there's so much in behind, in between the lines, sort of thing, and in every mindset. So in Star Wars, Star Wars is my favorite fiction genre. I call it a genre. It shouldn't be a genre. I know the genre is potentially fantasy or sci-fi, whatever you want to name. To me, anyway, we should go down with labels, period. So, but just Star Wars is big enough for myself that I love it as a universe, as a genre. And one of the major reasons that I fell in love with it was Darth Sidious right off the bat. It wasn't even Darth Vader. It was Darth Sidious. Then when I got into Darth Vader, because the way I got introduced to Star Wars, by the way, was episode 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. I never watched the original trilogy first. I watched the prequels first. When I then found out, I was like, Darth Vader isn't a villain. He's a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him in a different light, whereas other people were like, no, Darth Vader is a villain. And then they got to see how he became a villain. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's cool. It is a tragedy. It's a downfall. No, he's originally a tragedy. So I have a different perspective of Darth Vader in general. Star Wars is full of villains, all kinds of villains. Different kinds. They come from different places. They do different things. And I figured, what better way for me to learn more about Star Wars? I am nowhere near as caught up as Brian is, and the other guys on the podcast are. The other guys, the group that formulates our amazing. Honestly, it's such a hub of just free thinking and free thought and just free opinions flowing everywhere. Brian really is quite a central focal point here of us just having fun together and talking about everything that we can. We also vent about everything. The reason why I say all this, and I know I'm taking a lot of time doing this, is because anybody listening to this podcast who feels like that they need a space like this is hopefully what we're trying to do. This should be this space. You can talk about villains, you can talk about whatever you like in Star Wars, and one of the ways that I wanted to learn more about Star Wars was look at the villains and learn more about them. I don't know all these villains. I've been learning more about them as I go along. And I figured, let's talk about every villain, figure out how cool they are, because what makes a villain, I'm not talking about who's going to win in a fight, because if you're going to, that's it. You can just give it to Darth Vader, for example, or Darth Sidious, or whoever these dogs are, whoever these major characters are. But actually, what is really important in the villain is that you think that he's a badass, that he's cool, that you think that you could be him, that you would want to be like him, or not necessarily. By the way, if you think something's cool, doesn't necessarily want to be like him, but you could just admire it. Like he adds a little bit of flavor to the story. That's what I'm getting at. So this is the ranking that we're doing. So we're pitting up villains against each other, and they're put up into separate categories. So we're not pitting up, for example, force users against military generals just yet. We're gonna do the military generals alone on their own first. And we're going to cycle through them, pit them up against each other, do a few brackets, and then potentially have a champion per group or per category, or have them all fight it out until the death. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along.
The ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, we've got a bunch of names over here in this wheel. We're picking them randomly here so you guys know we're not rigging this thing. And we've got this big wheel. The wheel o' names is what we're using. We're actually using wheelofnames.com. And I put all the names in here, and we're going to pick right here on the show which two. So before we pick these two, I want to let you guys know, last week it was General Hux and Count Vidian from the A New Dawn novel. And you guys voted on our social media pages, and it was a landslide Count Vidian. Count Vidian won that sucker all like balls to bone. He won it all the way through. So let's pick out two more for this week, and we'll see where we go. Let's see here. Got a little wheel turning. Okay, this could be an interesting one. First name is Director Krennic is going to be the first one. So we're going to see who's going to be going up against.
Waiting for him to pop up.
Yeah, let's see who pops up against Director Krennic.
Okay.
Spin. Ooh, and I already know how this one's going to go. It's Admiral Trench. Admiral Trench versus Director Krennic. So what you guys need to do now is head over to our social media pages, whether it be our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or our Twitter. You guys can vote on all three of those. You guys can vote multiple times if you want. Find that poll and vote. Who do you think is cooler? Not who would win in a fight, but who is cooler, Director Krennic or Admiral Trench? Real quick, since I think everybody basically knows who Director Krennic is, what say we talk about Admiral Trench just for a quick minute? He was in Clone Wars.
Exactly.
And he was basically, so he was the big spider general, the admiral from the first, I think it was the Christophsis episode. Or no, it was the Malevolence. I think it was the Malevolence episodes, if I'm not mistaken. And ended up coming back in the last season as like half cybernetic. It was pretty cool. Tactical genius. So Usef, tactical genius. Not like Thrawn level tactical genius. Not like that level. But Usef, if you're voting for either of these guys, which one are you voting for?
It's closer than you think it is, because I know that I like. So I enjoyed Admiral Trench more than I did Krennic. I think everybody did. But everybody who's giving Clone Wars a chance, that is. Krennic is devious. Krennic is hardline. Krennic is such an evil boss kind of guy. You know, he's very what's the word? He doesn't give you the air of a silver spoon. He gives you the air of a bureaucracy.
Right.
You know, he's kind of
an
like
aristocrat.
that whole the aristocracy sort of what's the word? Feels like a party man. He feels like somebody who's been on Coruscant all his life, just to be going up through the motions. He's his scenes with Vader were cool. Like, so it's like he's trying to insist on his own power, on his own rank, and he's trying to insist that he has, you know, it really wasn't me, it really was Governor talking. He kind of gets overshadowed, you know, by everybody above him. Mm-hmm. But he's in that sort of position where, okay, so you're in control, so you need to prove that you're in power here right now. So there has to be zero failure, and maximum accountability, even for stuff that you can't control, stuff like that. So he has his own shit going on. Admiral Trench, though, I liked him because Clone Wars was great. It was basically, so the whole thing behind Clone Wars is that they're super heavy on attacking, you know, the Republic, attacking all these planets, and they're trying to create a separatist movement. So they need military prowess, and they've got cannon fodder to spare. So they've got droids upon droids. So rarely do you actually see Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka come up against someone, or the rest of the Jedi, of course, in Clone Wars and the 501st and everything, come up against someone who is, you know, a formidable enemy. Usually it's just, oh, we've fallen into an issue here, so let's try to get out of it. But when it's like a battle, when they're like coming up against an adversary, it's Admiral Trench. It is. And it's great. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. It's either Admiral Trench or it's Dooku, right? So
right.
And Dooku is usually a one-on-one showdown. Whenever we saw like the military tactics being played, and Anakin being a general, and then Obi-Wan saying we should do this, and then Anakin rushing in and doing that, and then Ahsoka trying to do sort of an independent spying mission on the side so that they get an edge here and there. Yeah, Admiral Trench is great. He's fantastic. The insight he does and everything he says, it's just fantastic. He's super fun. And he gives the Clone Wars a lot of flavor.
He does.
He really does. Yeah. And I was never bored when Admiral Trench came on, basically.
Yeah. No, I agree. I always thought he was really cool. If I'm voting, it's going to be Trench. That's who I'm going to end up voting for. So, guys, head over to our social medias, like I said, and sound off. Let us know what you guys think. Comment. Let us know why. Let us know why you're picking each of these guys. So, head over there and vote on that. So, guys, we've got a mailbag question this week that we're going to throw out for y'all. And we're going to try to answer it to the best of our ability here. If you guys want to get a question on the Star Wars Canon Podcast, you can email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com, or you can message us on Facebook and let us know there. This week we've got the one question, and I think it's a great question. It's one that I really wanted Usef's opinion on this with, and I think it's a really good question. The question comes from John Trinsdale. I think I said your name right. Please forgive me if I didn't. Like I said, I've said before, I'm no good with names, guys. I promise you, it's nothing personal. I'm just no good with names. So John Trinsdale has written in, and he says, hello there, Usef and Brian. Great to see you guys back and at the perfect time. I was talking with a friend the other week about Anakin and the prophecy of the Chosen One. Do you think Anakin would have still fallen to the dark side if he hadn't known about the prophecy? Keep up the great work and loving the website so far. Thanks for the kind words, John. Usef, I'm going to kick it over to you first thing. Do you think, based off of everything that we've seen, everything we know, do you think Anakin would have still turned to the dark side had he not known about the prophecy?
So I think if I had to deconstruct Anakin's turn to the dark side in the first place, I think he still would have, because if I had to deconstruct his fall to the dark side, there were a lot of building blocks. And then a huge, massive one, which really tipped it over. The other building blocks were mostly his ambition. You know, he wants more. If you remember that quote, he's saying to Padme, he's like, I want more. I'm not the Jedi I should be. He's not saying I'm not Jedi I could be. He's saying the Jedi I should be. So it's about ambition. It's about getting what he's owed. So he's angry at people. He's not angry at himself. He's angry at others. He's saying that he's already worth it. And that could be built by the prophecy. But it's also in himself. Now, having that prophecy build that up, yeah, of course. That did that 100%. You can't say it didn't. I mean, not you, Brian. I'm not saying in general. Like, you can't say that, you know, if you hear this, and even if you don't keep talking about it, it's done something to you. It's in the back of your mind. It's there. I think so, at least. But the big thing that turns him over to the dark side isn't his ambition. It's his fear for the ones that he loves, and specifically Padme, which was really egged on by, by Darth Sidious. And I think that he would have ended up on the dark side either way. He would have been egged on, and he would have been played on that sort of, that he would have played those strings. Darth Sidious would have played those strings. That's what I think, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because also, I think that the prophecy, I mean, history keeps replaying itself in real life and in fiction, because we keep learning the lesson just in different ways. Whether it's dictatorships and tyranny don't work, whether it's the freedom of choice, that there's a cycle to it, as there is a cycle with prosperity. Look at me. I live in Egypt. Thousands of years of domination and regional domination and secularism and amazing sort of advancement and profound freedom, and then in the entire region, really. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. In the blink of an eye, throughout, according to history books. I'm not saying they got wiped out. I'm just saying that, they're gone, and then it's thousands of years later, and we're, this part of the world is nowhere near having the same type of freedom, the same type of prosperity that they used to be, etc. And the other, on the other side as well, medieval Europe, the Black Plague, there's a reason why they're called the Dark Ages. And now look at it, these years and today. Sure, there's a lot of issues, if you want to. I'm not trying to get political or anything, but history is a cycle. So there wasn't really a lesson about this to be learned in Star Wars, is what I'm getting at, is that we haven't seen many characters fall this kind of way. So even if you get to be the center of this prophecy, this person who will bring balance, the only way potentially you could bring balance is by seeing yourself fall so hard and having to have somebody pick you up, because you need allies to fight. You can't fight the dark side alone. You need to be together. Carrying a burden on your own is such an issue. So rather than carrying it all on your own and trying to protect the ones you love out of fear, you need to own up to another side of it. And there's a lot to unravel there. What do you think? Am I rambling too much?
No, you're good. I think you have to really step back and look at what the prophecy even means in the first place.
Right.
Because if the prophecy meant, he's going to wipe out, 99% of the light side so that the dark side and the light side can be in balance, then, I'd say he still fulfilled it, and I think it almost had to happen for him to fulfill it. I think it was written in the stars. I think it just was. And we were talking about the Dave Filoni thing earlier, how he talked about that Duel of the Fates lightsaber duel and how it's the fate of Anakin. Look, Anakin knew about the prophecy from day one, because Qui-Gon stood there with his hands on his shoulders, and told the Jedi Council, he is the chosen one. You must see it. And Anakin knew before he was even accepted into the order about the prophecy.
That he's the
yeah,
chosen one.
and that burden that he carried with that from being 9 or 10 years old and up. And, we know he was bullied by other Padawans because of, the prophecy. And, he held himself to a higher standard thinking he should be better than everybody else because of the prophecy and everything like that, And so I think it definitely played a role in it. But I think the biggest thing that played a role in Anakin turning to the dark side was Qui-Gon losing the Duel of the Fates. That, I think, had a bigger impact than him knowing about the prophecy. Because him knowing about the prophecy is no big deal. Had Qui-Gon survived that fight, Obi-Wan wouldn't have trained Anakin. It would have been Qui-Gon training him. He would have understood Anakin's background. He got ripped away from his mother. Qui-Gon cared about people still. I think he would have still let him go see his mother. I think Anakin would have got to see Shmi several times before she died, so that when she did die, it wasn't this huge tragedy for him.
Absolutely,
got there at the last minute, and I think Qui-Gon would have.
And Anakin would have seen Qui-Gon as a different kind of master in the way he saw Obi-Wan as a master. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon seeing Anakin as a different kind of Padawan than Obi-Wan seeing Anakin as a different kind of Padawan. Obi-Wan in himself, it's such a heavy moment for me. Revenge of the Sith will remain my favorite movie because of this struggle. Seriously, he's like my brother. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the guys. I can't believe it. And he's your student. He's your apprentice, but he's like your little brother. And Anakin as well. He's like my older brother. He's like, I should be neck and neck with him now because we're going to get promoted. I'm going to get promoted to be like him, sort of thing. Whereas with Qui-Gon, he would never be that. He's like, no. Qui-Gon should be a Grand Master. He just left the Jedi Order for me because he's so wise, and it would be a different approach entirely. Yeah, absolutely right there.
It's like Dave Filoni has said, Qui-Gon was the father figure, and Obi-Wan was the brother. And so I think Qui-Gon would have trained Anakin with the prophecy in mind. I think he would have definitely driven it home with Anakin quite a bit, that this is what you are, this is what we need to do. And I think Qui-Gon would have just taken Anakin away from the Order and just went somewhere, trained him on his own, and and then brought him back and say, here we go. But would the same thing have happened? You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Was it fated that Anakin was meant to turn to the dark side to bring balance to the Force? It all goes back to what the prophecy actually means. So I think it definitely played a part in him knowing about it. I think definitely played a part in him turning to the dark side, because he expected so much out of himself, and that he couldn't live up to it the way he thought he should. I think that was definitely a huge part of it. And then, with Palpatine seeing that and just twisting it and seducing him and just manipulating him on a level, because what was the big thing Palpatine kept talking to Anakin about in episodes 2 and 3? They don't trust you. The Jedi don't trust you. And that's what it was. That's what he kept trying to seed, sow those seeds of doubt and discontent. And so that's what really started to lead him down that path. And, I think no matter what, he would have fulfilled the prophecy, whether that meant taking out all the Jedi or not. But I think Palpatine had a big role in how it went down. So
absolutely, 100%.
So it's really up in the air, though. It really is about whether or not he could have, stayed on the light side. And can you imagine, though, had Anakin not fallen to the dark side and actually brought balance to the Force and had the twins? And, can you imagine how much different the galaxy would have been? Had he killed Palpatine when he had the chance, it would have been this vastly different timeline. So I think it's a great question. I think it's really fun to sit here and talk about these what ifs. Dark Horse used to do a comic series called Star Wars Infinities. And one of them was if Anakin hadn't died at the end of Return of the Jedi and had come back to the light side and Luke took him back to the rebellion and everything. And I think we need to, Marvel has a what if series. Why can't we? Why can't we have like Absolutely. A Legends what if?
I'd effing love that. I'd effing love it. So here's the thing. I stopped about a year ago, stopped watching those what if, like YouTube what ifs, whatever YouTube channels you guys like to watch on Star Wars, getting those different opinions in. Of course, do that. I loved watching those what ifs. Absolutely amazing. But they drove me crazy because I wanted to see them so bad. And then, so there's only, it was never like, for example, a former writer of Lucasfilm comes with me and co-writes this what if series. No. That didn't happen. It was purely fan written. And so it could drive you up the wall because sometimes
Yeah.
everything was great except that ending was crazy. It's like no. It's like I'm not. It's right. I have to remember that I'm not listening to a writer. I'm not listening to, or maybe they are, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not listening to George Lucas. I'm not listening to Filoni. I'm not listening to someone in Lucasfilm. I shouldn't care this much about it. Why am I getting worked up about it? It's just a what if. But if I get a what if in Star Wars, potentially. Well, I think the reason why we not shouldn't. I think the reason why we won't get a what if in Lucasfilm Star Wars is because there's just this concept of the multiverse in Marvel. So if you get the concept of the multiverse in Marvel, then you should get what if, because there is technically a different universe where so and so happened, because just as Doctor Strange, got his villain of himself, which was a different Strange from a different multiverse, then potentially in Star Wars you could get a good Thrawn, or you know what I mean, a good Darth Maul. Imagine that. Or exactly right. Or,
A Darth Maul that's not
uh,
Sisyphus. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, or an evil Yoda who could actually be master of the universe. So
Yeah.
that could
And
be
we've
totally
seen a
it.
glimpse of the Shadow Yoda too. You remember that? In
Exactly.
Clone Wars.
That was really good. It
that
was
was
really, really,
terrifying.
really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
So I've got a Black Series figure of, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, if you guys are watching the video version, but they did Black Series figures based off of that issue of Infinities where Vader turned back to the light side and he just had the white armor and was
Whoa.
helping them track
Yeah.
down Palpatine and stuff. It was a lot of fun. So I don't see why we can't do that again. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
It's
so
really, really cool. And the box it kind of looks like a comic book. It closes like one.
Cool.
And so
Super.
there's the figure and then a picture of him from the comic, all in his white armor, his Anakin Skywalker armor, is pretty cool. So I think they definitely need to do something like that. And can you imagine the possibilities, man? It'd be insane, dude. So
I'd definitely love that.
anything else on Anakin turning or the prophecy before we call it?
Nothing other than, Anakin turning to the dark side is probably one of the most important things that makes me love Star Wars, because the essence of the story is not, Star Wars is nowhere near just cut and dry. It's complex. There's a lot behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems in your anger you killed her. Oh shit. Like, seriously. And then everything that he did to himself. It is such a trip, man. It is such a horrible, unbelievable story, and yet so powerful and entangling. And then Obi-Wan seeing Vader, so that was even harder almost. Maybe because it grows, like you say, a lot of time passes, so it really hits you hard. It hits you harder when you look back and see Obi-Wan defeating Anakin, and then Obi-Wan in Obi-Wan Kenobi series taking on Darth Vader, and Ahsoka meeting Vader, and then, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, so reading that bit of Darth Vader meeting one of Padme's stand-ins, one of her doubles. So for anybody who doesn't know this, Senator Amidala, who was Anakin's sweetheart, his wife in secret, she when she used to be a politician, she used to be queen of her planet. They used to have, queen and everything, and her authority and all that, but she was an elected queen. It was a very interesting concept. That she and she was also very young at the time. She was like 14, 16, something like that. She was like the queen. She used to have body doubles, so a person would stand in for her place and wear her headdress, wear everything, just look exactly like her. You've seen that in episode 1 when she comes forward and she's like, no, I'm the queen. I'm Queen Amidala. She's just my double. She's my loyal subject, so that she can be in disguise and experience the world in a different way, and so on, and at least not get killed. Darth Vader meets one of her doubles when he's Darth Vader, and the most important bit of that for me was that split second when he saw her, and his heart stops for a second. He's like, "What was that?" But he couldn't feel her.
Right.
He couldn't feel her through the Force, but he saw her. So I can only imagine myself in his position, in his big black boots and cape, and just go, "WTF was that?" Like, seriously? Like, he has got no one to look to. By the way, I'm looking around like this. He has to look introspectively, and he's like, "No." So yeah, it's just when you experience all these things, it just makes it just makes Anakin turning. It just makes it so hard. It's
does.
hard on me, let alone hard on everybody else.
It's stressful. It's so stressful. So talking about Vader real quick before we go. I don't if there's this VR series called Vader Immortal, and it's you can get it on. I played on PSVR. I think you can get it on Oculus. But it's 3 episodes, and basically it takes place between episodes 3 and 4, somewhere in there. And it's Vader trying to bring Padme back from the dead. He's trying to use dark magic to bring her back to life, and he's doing it on Mustafar at his castle. So remember in Rise of Skywalker how it showed Mustafar with like trees growing and stuff, and it was like, whoa, that's a weird way to see Mustafar. That is because of what happens in Vader Immortal. He like puts this like life essence charge out into the planet, and it starts it to regenerate. So it was kind of nice. I got a nod, but that 3D, that VR experience right at the beginning of the game, pretty close to the beginning, you get captured, you and your droid get captured, and you're standing in a cell, and this Imperial walks in, and then Vader walks in, and even though it's just VR and it's a video game, and you're wearing a headset, when he walks up to you, he's so tall, and like he's just like 1.5 feet away from you in the game, and you can, even though it's just VR, I promise you, I don't know how it works, but even in VR, you're just like, God, and you're like looking up at him, and you can feel this like presence, this like massing Hulk above you, and it's like, oh God, and you're just like looking at him, and and it's just so real, and it's like, God. So if you guys haven't played that, go play it. I just wanted to throw that out there about Vader real quick, because I always thought that was the first time I played that. That was when I was like, oh my God, like I'm in the presence of Vader, and it's like, I get it now. Like, holy crap. So go play. I just want to throw that in real quick. So go.
No, I want to play that as VR, and I still haven't bought my VR set yet.
No?
So I'll buy the PSVR too.
I need to get the new one.
I definitely have to.
I'm still rocking the original. I need to get a new. I got an Oculus too. I guess I could play it on, but I use that for Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away. The Black Spire, or whatever it was, the Batu, the Galaxy's Edge one, whatever. It's pretty cool too. You actually like pick up blasters and shoot. It's pretty cool. So, all right, if we've got nothing left for this episode, guys, make sure to tune in next week. We're going to be talking about episode 6 of AHSOKA, and we're going to be answering some mailbag questions. Remember, if you guys want to get one on the show, email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. Usef, I want to thank you for hanging out with me this morning and talking about some Star Wars stuff. And I know it's late. Thanks, where you're
Brian,
at.
for having me on.
Yeah, anytime,
it's
man.
It's not as late as we normally do it. So
right.
It's good. It's fine.
I think you're what, 8 hours ahead of me? I think is what it is.
Yeah,
and
so at the moment it is 9:23.
9:23. Yep. So thanks for joining me, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us for a little while this week, talking about our favorite thing in the world. So until next time, guys, this is Brian and Usef signing off. May the Force be with you guys. You've just been listening to the latest episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. I'm Brian Miller, joined by my co-host, Usef Waly. You can stream new episodes of the podcast every Saturday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/1138productions. Be sure to like and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening in on. If you'd like to get a question on the show, you can send it in to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, keep it civil, and may the Force be with you.